Good evening and welcome to the penthouse of the spiritual bungalow. Utis, how are you doing today?
What light through yonder window breaks? It is the
Yes.
east, and it is the light of the light of the sun, because I'm facing east.
Yes, Otis is very excited that
Right.
we're doing a poetry night because we're really getting our grind set to get as many views as possible and what could be more popular.
Nothing is more
YouTube,
popular
So
than people reciting their favorite poems.
Otis, yes, this is actually a great example of such a video that I'd like to share as something that's very indicative of this kind of caliber of YouTube videos here. I think it has like 300 views from about 15 years ago.
Hi, YouTubers. Hey, it's Drew. Good evening. Good day, depending where you are. Poetry tonight. And this one will be Women, Wine, and Snuff by John Keats. Give me women, wine, and snuff till I cry out, hold enough! You may do so, sans objection, till the day of resurrection. For bless my beard, I shall be my blessed Trinity.
We didn't rhyme it properly.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching, and good evening.
And thanks for the blasphemy. Oh, that's great.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wonderful YouTube. Thank you for all this beautiful things. Okay.
This is all like very applicable to poetry.
Yeah, of course. So, are you invoking Jack Dorsey as your favorite poet today, since that's your also possible name for you, since you mysteriously remain unnamed on this channel?
If I was Jack Dorsey, do you think I would have gone to work today?
I doubt it. But the woman
only occurred to me after I was shouted at by a woman of uncertain mental faculties that I was Jack Dorsey because I had no cigarettes to give her.
Yes.
I mean, she also referred to me as the Prince of Darkness. So,
you mean Ozzy Osbourne?
Get off the rails of the crazy train.
Choo.
Me do no.
I think that she was.
No one knows the words to the song.
The woman was on a bit of a crazy train.
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, it's par for the course. This is what happens when you actually. This is what happens. I mean, partially, or I would argue mostly responsible for the current state of decline of Western civilization would be the poets who qualify as poets today. Perhaps we could recite some of their strains in order to
some of the strains. Well, I think
fortify the party against the horde of goblins that's coming, and roll a 2d6 or whatever. No, because Plato tells us quite rightly that bad poetry will produce a bad society. He wasn't wrong. I mean,
yeah, it's
post-Periclean Athens kind of went down the crapper.
Were there some bad poets at the time?
Well, a lot of people castigated Euripides for he's a good poet.
Oh, interesting.
But
yeah.
For his sort of agnostic, atheistic
But it's interesting because he was so much at odds with sort of kind of the values of Periclean society, because he was a recluse for one, and also, you know, didn't show any sort of, at least in his art, any external signs of piety, which
No, and that was
is
part of the accusation, and I mean, Sophocles is the Periclean is the
ideal.
apex, Periclean.
Yeah, it's interesting because Sophocles did actually praise Euripides in saying that I portray men as they should be, and Euripides portrays men as they are. So he has this kind of realism, and I think that's why he's, you know, more popular in our age than sort of
The problem with
yeah.
the difficulty with the realism is that it kind of sets a standard of literature, sets a standard of
Morality,
behavior. Yeah, morality and behavior, and so
sure.
Bad poetry can lead to people behaving badly because they imitate it, even if the poets themselves, that's not their intent. It's what's gonna happen. Subtlety. I don't think the fault of Euripides is that he's subtle, but the fault of Euripides is that he's vulgarizing subtlety, he's distributing subtlety, and so he kind of, there's a large mass of people who sort of think, oh, like, well, this is just okay, right? It's as though someone went to read like Crime and Punishment and decided that they should murder a pawnbroker.
Well, I mean, but that's obvious. It's an obvious indictment against sort of that individualistic mentality and doctrine that sort of Raskolnikov was trying to espouse in doing that action. Like he was trying to become like his own Napoleon by sort of taking into his own hands sort of the whole sort of question of morality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but there is a, well, I'm not criticizing Dostoevsky for that. It's fairly obvious from the text, and it's also, it's not popular literature in any sense.
Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's not really any popular poetry. It's become sort of like an academic pursuit at best, and that's a very sort of fringe category of academics.
Not entirely true. I mean, I think the last sort of popular poetry actually was the movement in the 60s, the folk music movement.
Oh, sure.
But
yeah.
I also think a lot the poets, this came up briefly in the pre-show, that the poets like Bob Dylan, I'm going to call him a poet, not just a songwriter. Poets like Bob Dylan were vastly misinterpreted by their audience, the majority of their audience. I would argue most people who liked Bob Dylan didn't understand what he was doing.
What was he doing?
I don't know.
So you don't know either, yeah.
Yeah, but I
But you don't make a pretense.
Like Socrates, I know that I know not, and that's what makes it less dangerous. Is that I don't venture. You know, it's.
So you're trying to say that he wasn't just some sort of like champion of like the sexual revolution?
I don't think
like
he ultimately was. I think he was. I think he was caught up. No, that's not what he was. That's not. I don't. I'm willing
it's more
to
of the
stake
cultural
the position
revolution
that he wasn't. He wasn't. I think he was pushing back against the kind of 50s culture there.
Sure. No, well, that makes sense.
He's sort of like that sort of very fake Dick Van Dyke world. Right? And an author who I'm quite fond of, Charles Cullum, talks about this. He talks about how what they were looking for, what these people were looking for, that because the Renaissance Fair, for example, became very popular in the 60s and 70s. Sure. What they were looking for was something poetic and transcendental and something.
Right.
And then the church just like dropped the ball,
Right.
like card, like not just a fumble. Like they got the ball, and then they brought an excavator to the field, dug the deepest hole that they could, dumped the ball in the hole, and buried it under 200 feet of dirt. That's how hard they dropped the ball in the 60s.
I think also too. Well, it was just horrible. Like the poetic output, if you can call it poetic. I mean, we looked at some of those hymns before.
No, it was
but
it was the ecclesiastical equivalent of Stalin's prolet cult. Like just all this fake art and poetry about smokestacks and workers, like and none of it was meant by the party. Like they were sleeping in the Winter Palace. They didn't care. It was all made up. Prolet cult was all made up. Trotsky, who's not a great person and never was. Trotsky even criticized prolet cult and said it was ridiculous. And
yeah, I think that but there was actually some pretty effective and artistic propaganda as well that came out from the Soviet Union, like Battleship Potemkin. Like, I mean, maybe that's the exception more than the rule, but it's obvious propaganda, but it's actually incredible silent cinema. It's it's very effective. And then Riot was the other one that he famously did, and it does kind of make you sympathize very much for the revolutionaries in to some capacity, which is
But my original point was that the church, everything they tried to imitate was like cheesy, and they had the truth, and they had it as expressed in the interaction that occurred with the Romantics. They had already kind of gotten a bit of a grasp on it, and they kind of just.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know. Like I think that it was kind of the was basically the general sort of output of the 60s movement in the church. Just absolute lame duck. Just because this is like your average experience. It's sort of of a Novus Ordo too.
We are chosen, we are Christ for one another. We are promised to tomorrow, while we are formed today. We are sign, we are wonder, we are sower, we are seed, we are harvest, we are hunger, we are question, we are creed. And where can we
Stop! No.
Quare tristis es anima mea, quare tristis incedo dum affligit mea inimicus.
Yes, the Lamentation Psalms. But it's but I think that's like I'd actually make an argument that poetry is sort of seen generally as sort of an effeminate aspect of culture. I mean, most I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't sort of pretend to sort of grasp sort of the general sentiment of 2023 men because it's just so diverse. But it seems like most, at least like blue collar men, wouldn't want to sort of admit to like in anything kind of like poetry or even consider themselves to be cultured. But I think that is it does kind of come from like the background of some of those like those awful hymns, which I kind of had their sort of origin from some of the romantic poets. Like one of the I wanted to actually I got up a clip for that for I think what kind of what sort of determines sort of people's understanding of poetry generally. I think this is kind of what they think of.
Hi.
Hi.
I like poetry, horseback riding, Vivaldi, and long weekends in the country.
Those are exactly the same things that I like. Wait a minute. We walked along while bright and red uprose the rising sun.
Wordsworth.
Incredible.
Just a normal day in the life of
Whoa.
Nicolas Cage. Am I right?
But yeah, but it's just that sappy sort of sentimentality that most people think of when they think of poetry. Unfortunately, yeah, it just yeah. I mean, like Wordsworth isn't like horrible, but I mean it is. But it's just so I don't know, just nature. It's just like and Louis like life like it's just like how he says he hates people who are just like life. He's just like it's like F you like just people who are high on life who just don't have any sort of grasp of reality.
Okay, well, we have about an hour to prove that wrong. So you want to do rock paper scissors? See who goes first.
I can go first. I think I have like the oldest poem because I've got a Shakespeare poem, and I think that we can.
I have an older poem than that.
Okay, then you go, and then I'll go to Shakespeare.
I'm gonna punish you and make you listen to me badly recite ancient Greek.
Oh, really? Wow.
Don't worry. This one actually is a little bit reflective, but I quite like it. And so, and we were talking about him earlier today. It's our good friend Pindar.
Pindar, yeah, he's on the on the pyramid of hierarchy. He's in the pretty high. He's pretty high aspect of the pyramid of hierarchy as well.
There were some things on that gobbledygook that really what?
Really
you can't possibly mean that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's only a portion of one of his Pythian odes. He wrote 4 sets of odes for the 4 sets of games because he wrote all of these odes were written to celebrate victors of the games and that sort of thing. And I always like this. I've recited it for you before. It's sort of like when you're kind of cold and then the sun hits you and you like a really nice moment. It's from the 8th Pythian ode towards the end. Epameroi ti detis ti deutis skas onar anthropos otan aigla dios dotes elthe lempron phagos epestin andron kai melikos ion. Just a short little snippet of it.
Sure.
And I found a nice translation of it actually. Someone put quite a bit of work into. So I'm gonna pull that up. What is man, poor creature of a day? Dream of a fleeting shade, mere nothing. Is he aught away? If aught, he soon shall fade. But when Jove smiles, cheered by the vernal rays, sweet breathes his life, serenely glide his days.
Oh yeah, it's actually quite a nice translation.
Yeah, it is a nice one, and some of the bits I like. Of course, he messes with the word order. I really like the epameroi, so that's where we get ephemeral from. So sort of something that's ephemeral, something that fades, and the notion of the God-given light, the notion that it's given by Zeus, that it lights up the days that man is someone who is no one. What really is man? He's a creature of a day. He's almost nothing. And this is in the middle of him praising the athletic virtue of someone. You have to remember as well. And so it's like, what is man? But man is not miserable. There are moments where man is illuminated by God-given light, and his days are happy. And I like that. I like the imagery, and there are moments in, and this is why I think of these verses every time I get hit in the face with a kind of like the rays of the sun, and I'm kind of like, oh, that's actually really pleasant. Before it gets really unpleasant, there's the part where it's really pleasant, and you're like, oh, well, there are things that are outside of our control, blessings that really do make our days blessed. And it's a wonderful thing to hear out of the mouth of a heathen poet who was 500 years before Christ.
Yeah, because He was a Theban poet from that would have been almost 200 years before Pericles.
Pindar is nice too. If you study ancient Greek, Pindar's Greek is still like, to his contemporaries, he was very archaic, and he was a deeply conservative thinker, and he was all about the aristocracy and arete, the Homeric arete, the virtue of the aristocrat, and being expressed now instead of in war in the games. And that's part of the appeal is Pindar's poetry is man's poetry. By men, for men. There's not much romance going on there.
So
and before people make any it is really just like the praise of martial virtue, or the praise of admiration. That's what's going on in Pindar, and it's I think it's a lost concept.
Yeah. So I've got my first poem is actually pretty complex, so it will take a little bit of time to unpack it. I'm not going to go through it by line, but I'll read it first, and then I'll sort of explain it, I suppose, and give my interpretation later. So this is called "The Phoenix and the Turtle," or "The Phoenix and the Turtle Dove" by Shakespeare. Let the bird of loudest lay on the sole Arabian tree herald sad and trumpet be, to whose sound chaste wings obey. But thou shrieking harbinger, foul procurer of the fiend, augur of the fever's end, to this troop come thou not near. From this session interdict every fowl of tyrant wing, save the eagle-feathered king, keep the obsequy so strict. Let the priests in surplice white, that defunctive music can, be the death-divining swan, lest through requiem lack his right. And thou, treble-dated crow, that thy sable gander mak'st, with the breath thou giv'st and tak'st, mongst our mourners shalt thou go. Here the anthem doth commence, love and constancy is dead, Phoenix and the turtle fled in a mutual flame from hence. So they loved as love in twain, had the essence but in one, two distincts, division none, number there in love was slain. Hearts remote yet not asunder, distance and no space was seen, twixt this turtle and his queen, but in them it were a wonder. So between them love did shine, that the turtle saw his right, flaming in the phoenix sight. Either was the other's mine. Property was thus appalled, that the self was not the same. Single nature's double name, neither two nor one was called. Reason in itself confounded, saw division grow together. To themselves yet either neither, simple were so well compounded, that it cried, how true a twain seemeth this concordant one. Love has reason, reason none, if what parts can so remain. Whereupon it made this threne to the phoenix and the dove, co-supremes and stars of love, as chorus to their tragic scene. Threnos. Beauty, truth, and rarity, grace in all simplicity, here enclosed in cinders lie. Death is now the phoenix' nest, and the turtle's loyal breast, to eternity doth rest. Leaving no posterity, 'twas not their infirmity, it was married chastity. Truth may seem, but cannot be. Beauty brag, but 'tis not she. Truth and beauty buried be. To this urn let those repair that are either true or fair. For these dead birds sigh a prayer. There's a lot going on in that poem. Did you, so in the Theranos, did you actually recognize the meter?
No.
It's actually a very similar meter to the Dies Irae.
Oh yeah. Oh, interesting.
Beauty, truth, and rare, and it's a triple rhyme. So it's the same rhyme structure and meter. It's not the lines aren't quite as long as the Dies Irae. So this poem is actually one of, I think, the most compelling arguments for that Shakespeare might have been a requisite Catholic, because no one's certain what this poem is about. It's obviously about death and love and unity, and a profound metaphysical unity. It's sort of like in a way that this was a big inspiration in a lot of the metaphysical poets. This type of verse, actually, and it the but one working theory is that it actually might have been about the martyrdom of Saint Anne Line, which was contemporaneous with Shakespeare, and and it is interesting because there's kind of this like kind of contraposition between the phoenix and the turtle dove, where at one point in the poem, the phoenix, who's a masculine figure, is holding the turtle dove who's been deceased, and it's sort of almost kind of a like an inversion of the pietà. Because there was a priest, a Jesuit priest, who was at this, who oversaw this funeral, who also was canonized. I can't remember the name of this Jesuit who actually celebrated the funeral, but that actually received her as she was in his arms after she came down from the gibbet, and so there's this. But there's some obvious sort of throws to sort of celibacy. So it's, for instance, the line where it says, "Leaving no posterity, 'twas not their infirmity, it was merry chastity."
Well, there's also references to there's also allusions. It's clear that it's not a strict allegory in that sense, but there's an allusion, I think, in the text that you read to the incarnation, to the
absolutely, yeah,
the hypostatic union. The phoenix is commonly given. The earliest example we have of the phoenix being used to typify the resurrection is in Saint Clement of Rome, in one of his works, and he's one of the apostolic fathers, so he would be the third pope to succeed Peter, so the fourth pope. And there's also a poem called "The Phoenix" by Lactantius, who was the great rhetorician who was the tutor to the Emperor Constantine's son. So I was when you were talking about the natures being in twain and the one and the other, and because of course the turtle dove is also usually used to represent the Holy Spirit, but
yeah, and I think that's going on in this poem as well, is that there is a certainly sort of a Trinitarian unification. That's,
well, it could also be used to represent the human nature of Christ, right? Because because he's meek and humble of heart. When we say that our Lord is meek and humble of heart, I mean, heart and humble are human attributes. We would only, by a very strained analogy, refer, I think, to the Godhead. This is not theological advice. Only by a very strained allegory would we refer to the Godhead as humble, because obviously the humility is, the measure of humility is God. Like you measure the distance, and of course the distance is infinite with the human person. But we talk about Christ as meek and humble of heart, and as one person, the person of Christ is meek and humble of heart. And there we mean God really does have a heart, and God really is humble, because the unity in the person is one, not two. But there's still two natures. It's a nice poem.
It's a beautiful poem. It's actually, it's my favorite piece of verse
You know,
that Shakespeare
it
wrote.
is very reminiscent of the metaphysical poets. I mean,
It does, yeah. It was
John
huge
Donne
influence on
is
them. Yeah,
John Donne is roughly contemporary, isn't he?
I think he was slightly later. I could check that, but I think he was. Yeah,
Yeah, slightly later, I think,
yeah,
but they do
yeah.
overlap.
He was later. Yeah, he just was more in the middle of the 17th century. I'm going to get another beer if you want to entertain our potentially existing audience.
Deedly, 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 dee, deedly, 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 dee, 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 ner, 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 ner. Ner, 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 ner. I'm not actually very good on the spot. I wasn't very entertaining.
Oh, that's too bad. Did you
Oh well.
are you drinking your classic scumbag martini?
Yeah, I haven't had any olives around for the while though, so I've just been doing it without a garnish. It's unfortunate, but I got a very nice vermouth for it. So,
I'm drinking my favorite beer tonight, which is
so,
nice IPA, freshly squeezed.
so advancing upon something much less deep and religious, I'm going to now recite something much more, blunt and the Cavalier poets, among who Richard Lovelace is a favorite. Court of Charles and the Charles I and the sort of sad ending that occurs, but oh well. The one day we'll shut down Parliament again, and it'll be glorious. Come on, Charlie III. Anyway, I will now recite to Athleia. I already screwed it up. To Althea from prison. When love with unconfined wings hovers within my gates, and mine divine Althea brings to whisper at the grates, when I lie tangled in her hair and fettered to her eye, the gods that wanton in the air know no such liberty. I know it doesn't rhyme. When
Liberty.
flowing cups, liberty.
That's how
When
they
flowing,
say it. Yeah.
when
Sorry.
flowing cups run swiftly round, with no allaying Thames, our careless heads with roses bound, our hearts with loyal flames. When thirsty grief in wine we steep, when healths and draughts go free, fishes that tipple in the deep know no such liberty. When, like committed linnets, I with shriller throat shall sing the sweetness, mercy, majesty, and glories of my King, when I shall voice aloud how good he is, how great should be, and larged winds that curl the flood know no such liberty. Stone walls do not a prison make, nor iron bars a cage. Mine's innocent and quiet take that for an hermitage. If I have freedom in my love, and in my soul am free, angels alone that soar above enjoy such liberty.
Excellent.
That's a man's poem right there.
It is. Yeah. It's kind of like a more, I don't know, like a more masculine Auden. Because Auden has kind of sort of like he's kind of typified as sort of the 20th century sort of masculine poet, but it's 20th century, so it's obviously not going to be as masculine.
No, and I love the sort of the image of flowing cups, and he's got all the sort of Cavalier, the stock Cavalier stuff, the flowing cups and the drafts of health to the king, and getting louder and louder and more drunk and more obstinate. I've been known to do that on a couple of occasions, and and sing shrill like a bird, and sort of They've locked him in prison, but I'm free.
I am free.
Fools, you've but put me in a hermitage.
So I kind of like the idea of keeping a chronological order, and so I'm going to skip ahead to the poem that I dislike. And this is a Walt Whitman poem. I'm not gonna read
we should do the we should do the poems we dislike at the end.
At the end. Okay, well, I
Yes,
just
at
kind of
the-
like
at
the
the end.
chronological because you can kind of show how sort of things kind of progress and degress, and then also potentially. Well, then I'm gonna then I'll have to skip right to like sort of a contemporary poet then, which is
Okay, fine. Hit me with the Walt Whitman.
Hit me with the Walt Whitman. Should I show the clip?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, do.
I'll do it before. This is great. This is modern entertainment at its finest.
Oh, Mom, I'm sorry I never come to see you. I'm just not a cemetery person. You're lying.
I am.
Walt Whitman! Ah, damn you, Walt Whitman! I hate you, Walt freaking Whitman! Leaves of grass my ass!
I very deeply you've been trying to get shredded or something? Like what's with the
I've been watching this guy who makes fun of Hollywood workouts, and I find it pretty entertaining.
And then all of a sudden you get all the Hollywood workouts.
I know. Yeah. The okay, so this is called Song of Myself.
Of course it is.
But you can kind of see this is kind of like the trajectory of where poetry went, and we're going from Richard Lovelace to Walt Whitman. It's kind of it's a kind of a good sort of indication of where something went haywire along the way. And the unfortunate thing is that Walt Whitman actually is an excellent writer, but his ideology is just so grossly effeminate. I say effete. Did you say? Yeah. It's just
I think that part of the rule was we had to pick stuff that wasn't just doggerel, you know.
No, and this is
just
very well
go with
written.
some beatnik poetry and just like hit bongos and wear a beret.
Ooh,
Man.
Yeah. That might be kind of fun too, though. Just get some like absolute doggerel, just like that someone did when they took acid.
I do think that
is flying over the hills, and now I've taken
like a
many
hill
pills
on a
and
strawberry with the pills. I do think we should do an episode.
Casing is lacing my life, and
I'm just reading Captain Beefheart lyric sheet. Like, what is this?
a squid eating dough in a polyethylene bag is fast and bulbous. Got me? No, I don't got.
Nope. Got nothing there because there's nothing to have. We should do an episode where we just read. We just read contemporary pop lyrics to exemplify how bad they are. We could start in the 70s and just go forward because they're all crap.
We're just really gonna just hit up those views with these videos, you know, just make it being. Okay.
Started at the bottom. Now we're here at the bottom.
Now the whole crew's here.
We dragged him in with us like crabs.
Okay. I'm just going to read the first two stanzas because this is kind of not two stanzas, first two chapters, because there's like 16 chapters to this. Oh, this is a really long version. Yeah. Okay. No, I'll just. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah. No, that's not.
Give me the highlights here.
Yeah. Well, I've only read kind of the beginning here, but so.
Give me the mouth spider parts.
The mouth spider. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume. For every atom belongs to me as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood formed from the soil, this air, born here of parents, born here from parents the same, and their parents the same. I now 37 years old, in perfect health begin, hoping to cease not till death. Creeds and schools and abescence, retiring back a while, sufficed at what they are, but never forgotten. I harbor for good or bad. I permit to speak at every hazard. Nature without check, with original energy. Houses and rooms are full of perfumes. The shelves are crowded with perfumes. I breathe the fragrance myself, and I know it, and like it. The distillation would intoxicate me also, but I shall not let it. The atmosphere is not a perfume. It has no taste of the distillation. It is odorless. It is for my mouth forever. I am in love with it. I will go to the bank by the wood and become undisguised and naked. I am mad
And
for it
hopefully
to be.
arrested. Oh,
I am mad for it to be in contact with me. Be in contact with me, oh nature. The smoke of my own breath echoes, ripples, buzzed whispers, love root, silk thread, crotch and vine. My respiration and inspiration, the beating of my heart, the passing of blood and air through my lungs, the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves, and the shore and the dark-colored sea rocks, and of hay in the barn, the sound of the belched words of my voice loosed to the eddies of the wind.
this is like the end of Clockwork Orange. I feel like I have my eyes held open with mechanical contraption. Oh,
A few light kisses, a few embraces, a
No.
reaching around of arms.
no! None of that. No, none of that. None of that. No.
The, the
No.
play of shine and shade on the trees as the supple boughs wag, the delight alone or in the rush of the streets or along the fields and hillsides, the feeling of health, the full noon trill, the song of me rising from bed and meeting the sun. Namaste.
Oh, no more. No. I can't.
I gotta
No,
finish the
no
section.
more.
I gotta finish the
Oh.
section. Have you reckoned
Oh.
1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get at the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origin of all poems. You shall possess the good of the earth and sun. There are millions of suns left. You shall no longer take things at second or third hand, nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on the spectre in books. You shall look through my eyes. You shall not look through my eyes either, nor take things from me. You shall listen to all sides and filter them from yourself.
No, I won't. I'm gonna look through the eyes of the dead. Bring me their eyes. I desire to look through the eyes of the dead and not have any of this happen.
Oh, so gross.
I'm
Like
gonna
he's
stay. I'm gonna stay in my clothes.
like he's on this like
I'm
this
gonna
later
stay
part
on
where
my
he's, like,
porch.
on like a hill where he's just like feeling his clothes and stuff, and his soul is sort of like wrestling around with him.
Like,
It's
is he
just like,
high on
yeah.
ecstasy? Like, oh, these clothes, so
So loose and
It's so they're so loose and soft in the sun.
it's
like
just, yeah. It's a
Pindar's
pantheistic
appreciation.
ecstasy, yeah.
Pindar's appreciation of like the lights of the sun and the recognition of the God-givenness of their nature. That
like the
is
opposite,
acceptable and
Yeah.
beautiful, but this is disgusting. I ugh.
It's true.
That was an unpleasant experience. Oh,
It's so prosaic too. Like, I mean, he is a good writer. I
Mm.
mean, Oscar Wilde, like himself, like, you know, went to visit him in America. I'm not sure why, but he did. But I think I wonder if it had to do more with his sort of sensuality than his actual writing.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
All right, what do you want to share next?
Ugh, like
You need to
soap.
rinse out your
I just
mouth.
want to soap my face. Okay, well, now we're going to sort of the Victorians.
Well, that's right in order then, that because this one was a later version. It was 1892, so I guess we're going back a little bit.
Oh yeah, so I've got Oliver Wendell Holmes passed in 1894, so roughly contemporary.
There you go.
Someone who isn't terrible. The Chambered Nautilus. This is the ship of pearl which poets feign sails the unshadowed main, the venturous bark that flings on the sweet summer wind its purpled wings, in gulfs enchanted where the siren sings, and coral reefs lie bare, where the cold sea maids rise to sun their streaming hair. Its webs of living gauze no more unfurl. Wrecked is the ship of pearl, and every chambered cell where its dim dreaming life was wont to dwell, as the frail tenant shaped his growing shell. Before thee lies revealed, its irised ceiling rent, its sunless crypt unsealed.
I love that.
Year after year beheld the silent toil that spread his lustrous coil. Still as the spiral grew, he left the past year's dwelling for the new, stole with soft step its shining archway through, built up its idle door, stretched in his last found home, and knew the old no more. Thanks for the heavenly message brought by thee, child of the wandering sea, cast from her lap forlorn. From thy dead lips a clearer note is born than ever Triton blew from wreathed horn. While on mine ear it rings, through the deep caves of thought I hear a voice that sings. Build thee more stately mansions, O my soul, as the swift seasons roll. Leave thy low vaulted past. Let each new temple nobler than the last. Shut thee from heaven with a dome more vast, till thou at last are free, leaving thine outgrown shell by life's unresting sea.
So do snails actually do that? Do they actually go into different shells?
It's a nautilus.
Oh, it's a nautilus. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, this is a different poem. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so they kind of
They go into different
they
shells.
kind of they well each of those sections as they get larger and they make themselves a kind of a new part, when in the shell that
Right. So it's not a
wreathes
loss.
around in the Fibonacci sequence.
It's not a loss.
But anyway, I really like that poem, and I think that it's not
A loss to read it.
it's prosaic. It's not a loss to read it. No, and it's prosaic, and at the same time, it's not disgusting. And the
I don't
message
think it's
is
quite. I don't
correct.
think it's very prosaic. I think it has. It definitely has a. There's a poetry to it. for
Sorry,
sure.
not prosaic. I meant, but yeah, it's very
The opposite of prosaic.
yes, that's what I meant. But it's very vivid. It's got a very vivid kind of.
So my next poem actually. So I was going to do a different poem by this poet, but this is kind of in the same line as this, but it's a contemporary version. So this is an Australian poet named Les Murray, and it's kind of. I won't tell you the title because this is actually how it was read to me, because it has sort of like some imagery where he's describing something, and you probably guess what it is right away, but I want to see if you can guess what he's describing because the title is just the thing that he's describing. And I really like that when poets do that, when they just sort of like use sort of vivid imagery to describe something quite simple. Okay. From the meadow poppy, this good blast of trans arrives as shock. Private cloudbursts blazing down, worst in a boarding house, greased tub, or a barrack with competitions. Best in a stall, this enveloping passion of Australians. Tropics that sweat for you, torrent that braces with its heat, inflames you with its chill, action sauna, inverse bidet, sleek vertical corsicating ghosts of your inner river, reminding all your fluids, streaming off your points, awakening the tacky soap to blossom in ripe autumn, releasing the squeezed gardens, smoky valet, smoothing your impalpable overnight pajamas off, pillar you can step through, force field absolving love's efforts, nicest yard of the jogging track, speeding airplane minutely steered with 2 controls, or trimmed with a knurled whaled. Some people like to still this energy and lie in it, stirring circles with their pleasure in it. But my delight's that toga worn on either or both shoulders, fluted drapery, silk whispering to the tiles, with a spiraling frothy hem continuous round the gurgle hole, the ecstatic partner, dreamy to dance in slow embrace, with after factory floor rock, or even to meet as Lot's abstracted merciful wife on a rusty ship in dog latitudes. Sweetest dressing of the day in the dusty bush, this persistent time capsule of unwinding, this nimble straight well-wisher. Only in England is its name an unkind word. Only in Europe is it enjoyed by telephone. Do you know what he's talking about?
He's an Australian, so I'm assuming that he's drunk on the beach. He's been poisoned by some sort of small animal that could kill a whale in one shot.
No, he's just talking about taking a shower.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that would give it away when he's talking about the tacky soap to blossom, because it kind of like the soap opens up when it hits it. He uses kind of like
Do Australians shower?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, of course.
They've built pipes?
They do. Yes, they have plumbers.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really impressive. I mean, but what you can accomplish,
And it says
what
only
you
in
can-
Europe.
what you can learn in prison is impressive.
Only in Europe is it enjoyed by telephone. So he has like this actually, they actually use kind of the handle thing and they wash themselves with it. So it's kind of like a telephone.
Mm.
What is your next poem?
Well, we're going to go back in time now.
Okay.
Back to a contemporary, once again, of these fellows, another Victorian. And it's the poem that I dislike.
Aha.
And I was looking through an anthology for poems that I disliked, and I found this. And I don't like this kind of social commentary poetry. Because I think it's enervating and ruinous to civilization. Growing Old by Matthew Arnold. What is it to grow old? Is it to lose the glory of the form, the luster of the eye? Is it for beauty to forgo her wreath? Yes, but not this alone. Is it to feel our strength, not our bloom only, but our strength, decay? Is it to feel each limb grow stiffer, every function less exact, each nerve more loosely strung? Yes, this and more, but not. 'Tis not what in youth we dreamed 'twould be. 'Tis not to have our life mellowed and softened as with sunset glow, a golden day's decline. 'Tis not to see the world as from a height with rapt prophetic eyes, a heart profoundly stirred, and weep and feel the fullness of the past, the years that are no more. It is to spend long days and not once feel that we were ever young. It is to add immured in the hot prison of the present month to month with weary pain. It is to suffer this and feel but half and feebly what we feel. Deep in our hidden heart festers the dull remembrance of a change, but no emotion, none. It is the last stage of all, when we are frozen up within and quite the phantom of ourselves, to hear the world applaud the hollow ghost which blamed the living man.
What is he talking about?
He's talking about being old and how when you're old, it's terrible and you suffer and then you die horribly and nothing good happens when you're old. It's a terrible poem.
Oh, it's kind of miserable.
Yeah, it's trash. That's why I hate it.
I've got a good poem to sort of counteract that actually shows that it is not that bad of a thing to become old. And it's another contemporary poem. It's actually a poet who's still alive, who's actually the Nobel Prize winner. It's Seamus Heaney. And this is
just gonna recite Beowulf's translation to
no,
us?
no. This is his poem
What?
called. This is
Gar Dana in Yer Dagum.
This is his poem called Digging. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests, snug as a gun. Under my window, a clean rasping sound. When the spade sinks into gravelly ground, my father digging, I look down till his straining rump among the flower beds bends low. Come up 20 years away, stooping in rhythm through potato drills where he was digging. The coarse boot nestled on the lug, the shaft against the inside knee was levered firmly. He rooted out tall tops, buried the bright edge deep to scatter new potatoes that we picked, loving their cool hardness in our hands. By God, the old man could handle a spade, just like his old man. My grandfather cut more turf in a day than any other man on Toner's bog. Once I carried him milk in a bottle, corked sloppily with paper. He straightened up to drink it, then fell to right away, nicking and slicing neatly, heaving sods over his shoulder, going down and down for the good turf, digging. The cold smell of potato mold, the squelch and slap of soggy peat, the curt cuts of an edge through the living roots awaken in my head. But I've no spade to follow men like them. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests. I'll dig with it.
It's a pleasant poem.
Yeah. Yeah, and it also kind of harkens to sort of like the pen snug as a gun sort of is a slight sort of homage to sort of the troubles that he was, which he was experiencing in his time, and sort of an homage to sort of the history and sort of the masculine and the kind of quality of men of Ireland in of the men who made Ireland, basically. Yeah. So yeah, it's I like it. It's a good sort of working man's poem.
Well, there you have it.
There we have it.
Some of our favorite poems. Some of our really disliked poems. The shower.
You didn't like the shower?
No, speaking of showers, I need one after Walt Whitman. If he wasn't dead, I'd take out a restraining order.
Well, I don't think you have to worry about that. He's been dead for quite a while.
I mean, hopefully.
Maybe his atoms are permeating your body right now as we speak.
I don't know. I want his atoms nowhere near my body.
All right. Well, good night, everyone. And remember,
you shall receive your reward in purgatory.
Indeed.